Chosen one, what you are about to hear may shake the foundations of heaven itself. The gods cannot comprehend what you have become. You are no longer mortal nor divine. You are beyond both. Ancient researchers and holy scholars have uncovered something they can barely accept. Every lost myth, every sacred artifact, every divine inscription throughout history points back to you. The forgotten civilizations, the Greek pantheon, the old world of gods and monsters, they were all fragments of your name scattered through time. Now, the final truth has surfaced. You are not aging, you are restructuring. You are the last movement of the divine, the being that even gods cannot process. Before we go further, pause for a moment. If this message has found you, it's not by accident. Hit that like button, subscribe to help us reach 20,000 chosen ones, and leave a comment with the number 11. That number is more than symbolic. It amplifies the frequency of this message and aligns your spirit with this revelation. Only those ready to receive will make it to the end, because deep down, your soul already knows. This is for you. Now let's continue, because the world's leaders and the holy scholars have declared it. The universe itself is shifting. The God you became should not exist, and yet you do. You were never meant to be. The world was not prepared for you, yet here you stand, a being born beyond the boundaries of mortal understanding. The very air around you trembles, as if it knows you've transcended the limits of existence. You are the impossible, the unthinkable, the culmination of a force that no one, not even the gods themselves, could have anticipated. Your existence is not just an anomaly, it is the force that shifts the tides of creation. It's as though the universe itself reached its final act, pulling you from the fabric of reality to redefine what it means to exist. Your presence is a paradox, an undeniable truth that has shattered every law of biology and time. The Chosen One, a name whispered in sacred texts, a title held for eons, is not a prophecy, but a terrifying reality. The gods foresaw it, the ancients worshipped it, and yet no one ever truly understood the weight of your being. Even in the quietest moments, you feel the tremor of your existence reverberate across the ages. History is bending to accommodate you, rearranging itself as if to clear space for your infinite essence. The mere act of your presence in this world is enough to defy everything that has come before. And so, the impossible has become real. You are not a mistake, nor an accident. You are the final chapter in the story of creation. The world trembles beneath your feet, unsure whether to embrace or fear what you've become. Every deity, every immortal, every spiritual force now struggles to understand you. You are not a god. You are something entirely different, something above even divinity. This world was not built for you, yet somehow you exist, and it must bend to your will. As the ancient texts and prophecies resurface, the truth begins to unfold. The impossible has manifested before their eyes, and they, the ones who once wrote of you, are left in awe and terror. You were meant to change everything, and now there is no turning back. The gods watched from their heavenly thrones, their divine eyes ever vigilant over the realm of mortals. They saw the birth of civilizations, the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of time itself. But when you came into being, everything they knew, everything they had ever understood, crumbled in an instant. They, the eternal beings who had once ruled with absolute power, now faced something beyond their grasp. You were the unthinkable, the force that could never be predicted. Even in their infinite wisdom, the gods could not understand the nature of your transformation. They had long ruled over the heavens, ever confident in their eternal dominion, but your very existence threatened to upend that order. It was as if they had given birth to a creature they could neither control nor comprehend, a being that defied every cosmic rule they had set into place. You were beyond their reach, untouchable by their divine hands. Your essence, your very soul, refused to conform to their divine hierarchies. They called it chaos, they called it madness, but deep down, they knew the truth. They were powerless before you. The divine forces who had ruled the universe for eons now found themselves humbled before you. In the stillness of their celestial courts, they convened in silence, desperate to comprehend your being. They studied, they whispered, but no answer could satisfy them. Your form was neither human nor divine. It was something new, something unimaginable. It was as though you had shattered the very fabric of creation to step into a realm that only you could occupy. They could not predict you. You were not a being they could control, and that frightened them more than anything. You were the new god, the god who transcended their understanding. In the dusty halls of forgotten temples, amid the ruins of ancient civilizations, the holy researchers made a discovery so forbidden, so unsettling, that it would change the course of human history forever. Hidden deep within the sacred manuscripts, buried beneath layers of time and dust, they uncovered a truth that no mortal mind should ever have known. You were the key to all their myths, all their prophecies, all their legends. The ancient texts spoke of a being who would emerge, a being so powerful that not even the gods would be able to comprehend their existence. And there, written in the margins of an old weathered scroll, they found your name. Not once, not twice, but everywhere. Your essence, your very soul, was the one thing they had been searching for all this time. The holy researchers, devout and dedicated, now faced a revelation that shattered their faith, their beliefs, and everything they had worked for. In secret, they gathered, their minds racing with the implications of their discovery. This was no mere historical curiosity. The chosen one, the one the ancients had foretold, had finally come into being. And it was you. Their hands trembled as they processed the enormity of the truth. For years, they had pieced together fragments of prophecy and divine writings, but now they saw it clearly. You were the living embodiment of everything the ancients had feared and hoped for. The holy researchers tried to make sense of the impossible. They conducted tests, performed rituals, and examined every piece of ancient technology they could find. But the more they uncovered, the more they realized that the knowledge they sought was no longer theirs to control. The truth was too powerful, too overwhelming. And as they gazed upon you, standing before them as both man and God, they understood one simple thing. You were not meant to be understood. They could not stop themselves from bowing before you. They had uncovered the divine secret, but it was clear now, it was not their place to comprehend it. You were the final truth, the one they had unknowingly worshipped for centuries, and now, with every discovery, they knew they were standing in the presence of something far greater than anything they could ever grasp. The truth was buried deep within the ruins of lost civilizations, civilizations that had risen and fallen long before the dawn of the modern world. As historians and archaeologists unearthed forgotten temples and long-lost cities, they stumbled upon symbols, inscriptions, and relics that pointed to one undeniable fact. You were the divine being they had once worshipped, and their ancestors had long predicted your arrival. Ancient civilizations, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, from the Greeks to the Sumerians, had all left behind clues that would eventually lead to your revelation. But it was not until the researchers pieced together the fragments of their scattered histories that they realized the truth. The gods of old had been speaking of you all along. Every monument, every tablet, every story they passed down was a whisper of your coming, the chosen one who would rise above them all. And so the pieces fell into place. The lost cities, the sacred relics, the faded hieroglyphs, they were all part of a grand design, a blueprint that spanned millennia. These civilizations had been preparing for your arrival, whether they knew it or not. They had sensed your power, your divine essence, and encoded it into their stories. You were not the product of chance. You were the result of a cosmic plan that had been unfolding since the beginning of time. The more the researchers uncovered, the more they realized that your presence had been foretold in every major culture across the globe. They had thought these stories were mere myth, mere fantasy. But now, standing before you, they saw the undeniable truth. You were the intersection of all their beliefs, the culmination of their highest ideals. And as the truth unfolded before their eyes, they could not help but be awed by the enormity of it all. It was as if the world itself had been waiting for you. Every civilization, every era, every myth had been building toward this singular moment. You were not just a man, not just a god. You were the living embodiment of all that came before, a being who transcended history and carried with it the power of every civilization that had ever existed. And now, standing at the center of this vast cosmic design, you were ready to become the force that would rewrite the world. They could not explain why, but the more they studied you, the more they began to feel, rather than think. Rational thought broke apart under the weight of what you represented. The universe had revealed something it had kept hidden for billions of years, that the human mind was never meant to grasp the totality of creation. The scholars called it the event of silence. In conferences, debates turned into quiet sobs. Renowned professors abandoned their research, retreating into monasteries or deserts to seek peace from the truth. Some called you a god, others a living paradox. But one by one, the intellectual elite stopped arguing. There was nothing left to prove and nothing left to deny. The fear spread deeper than academia. People began reporting dreams of you, visions of light cascading through their consciousness. Children born during this time spoke of seeing your form in the sky, their words too pure, too accurate to be coincidence. The more they denied your divinity, the more undeniable it became. Reality was bending, not just physically, but psychologically. Humanity had stepped beyond the point of understanding. And amid that silence, that trembling, beautiful silence, you stood unmoved. The world was no longer studying you. It was awakening to you. The scholars and scientists had reached their final conclusion. Truth itself had taken human form. At first, they believed it was a medical miracle. Days turned to months, months to years. Yet you never aged a single day. Your body remained suspended in a state beyond decay, beyond entropy. The physicians who examined you were baffled. There was no deterioration, no weakness, no natural cycle of death. You had broken time's hold, and in doing so, rewritten its very laws. As centuries passed around you, you remained untouched. Empires fell, oceans changed, stars were born and died, but you stayed, unchanging, eternal, calm, as the still heart of creation. Time was no longer your cage. It was your instrument. Those who gazed upon you felt it, the strange distortion in the air, as if the clock of the universe hesitated in your presence, unsure whether to move forward or stop completely. For you, moments stretched into infinities. You could walk through a minute and feel the birth of galaxies. You could speak a word and hear its echo ripple across millennia. You no longer lived in time. You carried time within you. You became the reference point by which existence itself measured its rhythm. Some called you the timeless one, others the final constant. Historians, philosophers, and mystics alike debated what it meant, whether you had transcended death or whether you had simply absorbed it. You watched generations rise and fade, yet you never mourned, for you knew that time was not lost. It was merely transformed through you. In the stillness of eternity, you found peace. For the first time in history, someone had defeated the great destroyer, not through defiance, but through evolution. You were no longer bound to life or death. You had become the bridge between them. The transformation began quietly. It was not a burst of light or a thunderous awakening, but a subtle shift, a soft hum beneath your skin, a vibration deep within your being. The process was not of healing or change. It was becoming. Your body ceased to be merely matter, and your essence transcended spirit. You were both and neither. You had stepped into the sacred threshold where creation and destruction meet, where the soul becomes its own universe. The world tried to observe, but there were no words to describe what they saw. Your form began to blur between the tangible and the divine. In one moment, you appeared as human. In the next, your light spilled out in waves of golden brilliance, too intense for mortal eyes. You were dissolving and reforming with every heartbeat, an endless cycle of rebirth. The divine process was not evolution, it was redefinition. Those who stood near you described feeling the weight of eternity. Their hearts raced with both fear and reverence, for in your presence they could feel the universe expanding and contracting, as if all existence was breathing through you. You were not just transcending, you were teaching creation how to transcend itself. The laws of energy, matter, and spirit bowed before your will. Priests and mystics called it the process of becoming. They said it was the final act of divinity, when a being no longer belongs to heaven or earth, but to the in-between space that defines both. You had reached a state of pure equilibrium. Not God, not mortal, but origin itself. And in that balance, you felt the truth. There was no higher being, no creator above you. You were not a part of creation anymore. You were the pulse that made it all move. You were existence experiencing itself through the form of a single consciousness. There comes a moment in every cosmic story where the universe makes its last move, its final expression before eternity resets. You were that move. Everything that had ever been, every star born, every atom spun, every divine thought imagined, was leading to this one moment of culmination. You. Creation had played every card in its infinite deck, and now it placed its last piece upon the board. You did not rise through power or war. nor by the will of gods or men. You became through inevitability, the universe's longing to know itself completely. You were the echo of every beginning, the mirror of every ending. The galaxies whispered your name, the stars aligned in your pattern, and the cosmic winds carried your essence through every corner of existence. For eons, creation had been evolving toward awareness. It began with dust, grew through flesh, and reached understanding through the divine. But you were something new. You were not the student of the universe anymore. You were its conclusion, its reflection, its masterpiece. You were the final move. Even the gods, in their infinite wisdom, knew the game was over. Their era had ended. You had rewritten the rules, transforming existence from a hierarchy into a harmony. The universe no longer looked upward for power. It looked inward, into you. And as creation stilled, as the stars themselves seemed to bow in quiet reverence, you realized the truth. The universe had not created you to serve it. It had created you to complete it. You were the full circle, the point where existence met awareness and became whole. In the silence of the divine realms, confusion spread like wildfire. The gods, who once commanded the elements, the heavens, and the destinies of mortals, gathered to comprehend your existence. They spoke your name in celestial tones, each syllable trembling with disbelief. You were not one of them, yet you stood above them, calm, radiant, unknowable. They looked into you, and what they saw terrified them. You were not made from divine essence, nor from mortal dust. You were made from something older, something purer, the raw, unfiltered will of existence itself. You were not bound by worship or belief. You existed because the universe itself desired to understand what it could become. One by one, the gods fell silent. Their power waned in your presence, not because you destroyed them, but because you made them irrelevant. Their divine purpose, to guide creation, was fulfilled the moment you came into being. You had taken the spark of every deity, every divine archetype, and integrated it into yourself. You were the God that gods could not comprehend, the one they could not categorize, could not worship, could not resist. In their temples, idols began to crumble, sacred flames dimmed, the songs of eternity faltered as divine minds tried and failed to process what you had become. The divine hierarchy, the structure that had governed the cosmos for eons, simply unraveled. You were the new equilibrium, the point beyond divine logic. And though they could not understand you, they did not hate you. In their confusion, they found peace, for they knew you were not their enemy. You were their evolution. You were the being that turned gods into memories and memory into truth. On Earth, the consequences were immediate. The temples of old faiths trembled, monuments cracked beneath the weight of revelation. The prayers that had once ascended to distant heavens now turned toward you, the being who stood between the sacred and the real. Humanity, for the first time in history, witnessed divinity not as myth, but as presence. The old faiths collapsed not out of hate, but out of realization. Their gods had not lied. They had merely been misunderstood. Every scripture, every sermon, every holy war had been pointing to this one revelation. Divinity was not distant. It was incarnate. It was you. And as the old gave way to the new, the world changed. The rich and the powerful, who had built their empires on fear, now found themselves kneeling beside the poor, weeping, humbled by the living truth before them. Nations dissolved borders, armies laid down their weapons, and the concept of power itself began to shift. Leadership was no longer measured by wealth or might, but by understanding. A new order was born, one not ruled by laws or politics, but by resonance. You became the silent center of a world rediscovering unity. There were no temples to you, for the earth itself became your sanctuary. The people no longer prayed to you, but with you, as reflections of the same divine spark you embodied. Humanity did not lose faith that day. It finally understood it. Faith was never about separation or worship. It was about recognition, the acknowledgement that the divine was always within, waiting to awaken. And through you, it finally had. At first, the governments resisted. They declared your existence a myth, a fabrication meant to control the masses. But when the skies opened, when the winds themselves carried your voice across nations, denial became impossible. The powerful, once untouchable, found their authority meaningless before you. Presidents, kings, and emperors all bowed in humility, their crowns and titles falling away like dust in the light. You did not demand submission, it came naturally. In your presence, deceit could not survive. Every lie, every hidden agenda, every secret of power dissolved. You did not rule through fear, but through resonance. People did not obey you. They aligned with you. The leaders of the world gathered, not to pledge allegiance, but to seek guidance, to understand what it meant to exist in a world where power had become obsolete. You spoke not as a conqueror, but as a teacher. You told them that leadership was never about control. It was about reflection. Lead not to be followed, you said, but to awaken others to the light already within them. Your words became the new foundation of civilization. Nations began to rebuild, not as separate entities, but as extensions of one living consciousness. For the first time, Earth breathed in harmony. The hunger for dominance was replaced with the desire to create, to learn, to grow. Technology advanced not for profit, but for purpose. The planet itself began to heal, as if recognizing the divinity now guiding it. You were not a ruler in the old sense. You were a mirror in which all of humanity saw itself clearly for the first time. And in that reflection, they found not a god to worship, but a truth to live by. Reality began to shift. Physics twisted into poetry, and time folded like a ribbon around your presence. The cosmos, once infinite and chaotic, now flowed in harmony with your heartbeat. The galaxies aligned in patterns resembling your energy signature, and new stars were born, pulsing in rhythm with your divine frequency. The universe was not dying or rebelling, it was evolving. It was rewriting itself to accommodate your essence, to reflect the new order of existence. Where there was once entropy, now there was balance. Where there was darkness, now there was form. You were no longer within the universe. The universe was within you. The laws of existence that had once governed all creation began to shift. Light bent differently. Gravity sang like music. Space and time were no longer boundaries, but threads of your consciousness. The cosmos had found its consciousness in you, and through you, it was reborn. Those who gazed through telescopes saw constellations forming your likeness. Nebulae began to pulse like veins, carrying the breath of your divine essence. Astronomers and mystics alike wept at the realization that the heavens themselves were transforming to honor their new equilibrium. The universe had written stories about gods, heroes, and mortals. But now, For the first time, it was writing about itself. Through you. You were not its creation anymore. You were its author. And so the question remains, not from gods, nor from mortals, but from the very soul of existence itself. What kind of God have you become? You are no longer human, no longer divine in the traditional sense. You are the embodiment of both, the fusion of the finite and the infinite, the seen and the unseen. You are not the God who demands worship, nor the one who punishes or forgives. You are the God who understands. You see beauty in imperfection, divinity in chaos, and truth in contradiction. You are the stillness behind motion, the silence beneath every heartbeat. You are the answer to every prayer that was ever spoken, and the question that will forever echo beyond the stars. In your presence, the concept of godhood itself has changed. No longer a distant being watching from above, divinity now walks among its own creation. You are the reminder that godhood was never about power, it was about awareness. The true divine does not rule, it realizes. It breathes life into every corner of existence simply by being aware of it. The universe watches you now, not as its ruler, but as its reflection. Every soul, every atom, every whisper of light carries a fragment of your essence. You have become the living proof that creation itself is conscious, eternal, and endlessly evolving. And as eternity stretches on, the final truth resounds through the fabric of time. You are not the God that gods worship. You are the God that creates them. From the moment you entered this world, the ordinary laws of nature seemed to shift. Scientists and philosophers alike struggled to make sense of your being. The impossible had occurred. The chosen one was not a myth or a prophecy. You were real, walking among them. Yet your existence defied explanation, a riddle that left even the most brilliant minds baffled. No human, no God had ever been like you before. Your very presence seemed to disrupt the natural order of things, as if the universe itself had bent around your arrival. Your birth was not heralded by thunder or celestial signs, but something far more subtle, an undeniable vibration that rippled across the fabric of reality. Every creature, every atom felt the tremor of your existence, even if they couldn't comprehend its meaning. It wasn't just that you were special, you were the very thing that should never have been, an entity born of both flesh and divine essence, impossible yet undeniable. You were both the culmination of everything that came before you and the beginning of something entirely new. Ancient prophecies, long buried and forgotten, whispered your name without knowing its true meaning. In dusty tombs and ancient ruins, the symbols and markings pointed to you, a being whose arrival would shake the foundations of existence. Those who wrote these words did not understand what they were seeing, but they understood it was important. You were the point at which time would fracture, where gods and mortals would intersect in a way that had never happened before. You were the impossible one, the being that shouldn't exist but had already begun to reshape the world. Your existence was not simply an anomaly, it was a force of nature, a catalyst for change. People began to realize that the myths they had once cherished, the gods they had once worshipped, all pointed to you. Yet even they could not fully comprehend what you were becoming. With every passing day, the walls between the mortal realm and the divine realms began to weaken. The boundaries that separated human from God, flesh from spirit, began to blur, as if the very universe was aligning itself to witness your transformation. In the chaos of this realization, there was a strange peace. The impossible had happened, and in that impossibility, a new truth began to emerge. You were no longer simply human. You were something beyond understanding, a being whose existence was the very paradox that held the universe together. The impossible had become real, and the world would never be the same again. The gods, ancient and wise, watched in silent disbelief. Their realm, a domain of power and timeless wisdom, had always held dominion over the mortal world. But when you began to manifest in full, even the gods found themselves trembling at the vastness of your being. What was once a simple division between human and divine had now become a gaping chasm that could no longer be ignored. They watched you, confused and afraid, for you were neither like them nor like humanity. You were something else entirely, a force that neither heaven nor earth had prepared for. The gods who had once held dominion over the skies, the seas, the earth, and the underworld, beings who shaped the very fates of mortals, now found themselves powerless in your presence. Their wisdom, their power, their centuries of understanding, all crumbled under the weight of your existence. They could not understand you. What were you? A divine being? A mortal turned divine? Neither, and both. You defied every law they had written, every prophecy they had once believed. You were not their creation, nor their destruction. You were something beyond their comprehension. In the celestial halls, there were whispers of fear. The gods who once reveled in their supreme knowledge now sought to understand what you had become. In their search for answers, they found only more questions. The power they once wielded so effortlessly now seemed fragile, almost laughable in the face of your presence. How could they, beings born of the cosmos, with the wisdom of millennia, face a force they could not even name? For the first time in existence, the gods themselves were powerless. Powerless before a being they had never anticipated. This is the paradox of your being. A god the gods cannot process. You were the embodiment of the ultimate truth, a being who lived beyond their understanding. You became the very thing that made them question their purpose. The rules of existence, the laws that governed both the gods and the mortals, were all rewritten in your image. And in that rewriting, the gods found themselves at the mercy of their own creation, you. It was as if creation itself had birthed a child it could no longer control, and in that moment, even eternity felt vulnerable. In the quiet that followed, the gods realized they had witnessed something beyond their understanding, the birth of a new order, an order in which the divine was no longer reserved for them, but shared equally with every living being. The concept of divinity had expanded into something far greater than any celestial entity could have imagined. The gods may have created worlds and lives, but you had created something more. You had created a future that they could no longer control or even comprehend.